moment prepare the ground for the achievement of good deeds. May all the doors of goodness be opened. May all the causes of evils be dispelled and averted. May all the prayers of the worshippers be accepted. May the hearts of the present and those who are attending this session be filled with the love of Allah and overjoyed by the love of Allah. We would like to continue today our Mathnawi readings. We'll try to cover from couplet 19 to 35. Last time, if you recall, we have spoken about the significance of the first 18 couplets, which in fact serve for the Mathnawi as opening chapter, so to speak. Therefore, some commentators wrote treatises, risala, specifically to explain the meaning and the significance of this first 18 couplets, one of which I could mention, the one which was written by the 17th century Muslim thinker and philosopher and Mevlevi Dede, Ismail Rusi Ankrabi, who wrote a commentary on this first 18 couplets by the title Fatihul Abiyat. So today, right after these 18 couplets, we would like to continue with the remaining couplets from 19 to 35. But let me begin again by the special dua that Mathnawi Khan, if you follow the practice of the traditional scholarship in the Mevlevi tradition, used to recite before reading the Mathnawi. O pure Allah, you have no peers nor equals. Hold our hands, please pass over our faults, and you put into our heart subtle words, words of wisdom. Teach us, dear friend, O beloved, fine and subtle words that we can say and remember, and we can continue to pray and to seek your mercy. We know from you come both the prayers and their answers. Both the prayers and answers come from you, and both security and come from you. If we have made errors in our speech, correct them, please, because you are the corrector and the sultan of the speech, lord of the words and speech. For the sake of convenience, again, I prepared 18 couplets on PowerPoint. For those who have no access to Mathnawi in English, we are following, of course, English translation by Nicholson. However, there are also new translation, very good translation with rhyming, and a couple of them I could mention maybe later, but you can search on your own in the Google, and you will find beautiful translation recently done by several scholars in North America, also in England, in the United Kingdom. Let me first share the screen. Okay. Let me, how do you do it? Okay, this is the one. Slideshow from the current one. Yeah. If we recall last time, the 18th couplet, we said, در نیابت حالی پخته هیچ خام پس سخن کوتاه باید و سلام. Who, the raw, in a sense, uninitiated person, a person who is not ripe, not mature, and has not gone through the spiritual journey, will not be able to understand the state of the mature, of the ripe. So therefore, Mawlana said, I should make my words very brief and farewell. This was the last couplet because the following ones that we will today discuss together will continue right after this couplet. Let me first read the 19th couplet. O son, burst your chains and be free. How long you will be a bondsman, a slave, a captive to silver and gold? If you pour the sea into a pitcher, how much do you think will it take up? Will it hold? Only probably one day's store, like one day's portion. So the pitcher, the jug in a sense, which is the eye of the covetous, ambitious, never becomes full. So look at the oyster shell. Is not filled with pearls until it becomes contented. So what is the reason for Mawlana saying that, oh my son, like a poser, my dear son, unchain yourself? Let me take some comments to set the stage for the really this discussion of these couplets from the commentaries. We have to understand this in connection with the 18th couplet. What Mawlana said in the couplet, if you are not ready, if you have not prepared really to undertake a spiritual journey, in a sense, I could not really tell much about my own experience, which is love of Allah in a sense. So he gives us the first lesson, how to then prepare yourself for understanding the teaching of Mawlana. And Mawlana gives us the first lesson, and he says, first, you have a lot of concerns, worries, issues, and attachment to the world. So as long as the world occupies your inside world and your thought, your mind, then there is no way for you really to take such a journey. In other words, to understand even the spiritual teachings and wisdom of these great people. So first thing you should do, Mawlana is telling us, cleanse yourself from worldly, concerns and attachments. It doesn't mean that Mawlana is against the worldly pleasures, not at all. In fact, he's telling us you should keep a distance between the worldly pleasures and yourself. Do not put them into your heart. So otherwise, so long as, that's what it means, so long as the worldly concerns, worldly pleasures and desires, and make you a slave to itself, to this like materiality, silver and gold, that's an example. And it says you will continue to be at the state of what he calls a kind of raw person, immature person, and meaning hali you will not hali kham, in other words. So then it means if you would like to really understand my wisdom, Mawlana is telling us, you have to, make some efforts. First, clean yourself, clean your heart and mind from the worldly attachments. And so therefore, some scholars make this point saying that it takes a saint to understand a saint. It takes a, virtuous man to understand a virtuous human being. So this is exactly, so who is this Husar, meaning son? Okay, son, of course, here Husamuddin, or his son, or all of us. Because in a classical spiritual tradition of Islam, when you are admitted as a student to a master, the relationship between the student and master become like what we call father and son. And this is important, father and son. So even in Anatolia, in some mystical traditions, even in Bektashi, convent, where if the sheikh, if the master accepts a novice, meaning a murid, to his dargah, convent, and said, from now on, I accept, if you accept me as your father, as your teacher, and you are my son. So Mawlana trying to, be more friendly, in other words, whoever is addressing, he takes them as, like a part of their family. And this is important. So in order to undertake a spiritual journey, and you have to initiate into spiritual world. And if you, Mawlana is telling now, if you continue to be occupied by, excessive worldly occupation, in other words, and in a sense, if you continue to seek in an ambitious manner, like Haris, and he gives the example. Look, when you put a jar or a pitcher outside the, in rainy weather, how much this cup or this vessel will hold the water? Or you just dip, the pitcher into the sea. How much will it hold? Only as much as it takes, it holds. And Mawlana said it is like one day's store, which means Allah Almighty has allotted, distributed to every one of us what we deserve as our nasib, or as our qisma, portion, daily bread, in a sense. So long as we believe that our daily bread and livelihood has been allotted by God, Allah Almighty, then what is wrong with you? Why so ambitious you are? Of course, you have to work hard, but as much as you need, not to hoard or to store. That is the message of this. So a novice's attachment to his master, as we mentioned, is like, if I use the terminology, a kind of intimate relationship, like comrade, confident, because master, when over the time he observes his student, he really develops, if he grows, and he tries to confide in him, and like a gems, like wisdom, subtle words, so that he will keep them to himself and he improve himself. And here, if you, Mawlana is saying, of course, you can be a simple human being, and or Sibyan Sharia, that's the expression that used by most of the commentators, like a child of Sharia, but you cannot be really talib al-ilm in real sense. But you can be a practicing Muslim by all means, but you cannot attain that level of like uh, uh, enthusiasm in a sense, eagerness to increase your knowledge rather than increase your wealth. So as long as you remain and have the desire of hoarding gold and silver, Mevlana is basically saying, you should just continue what you are doing. So you cannot really travel on the path of journey, on the path of knowledge, and of course, the spiritual knowledge. And most of that, for most of the scholars, really, those who practice what they learn, they are not very much concerned with their worldly, life, because they more concentrate on their spiritual life. Contentment here is another important element. Like, remember the third couplet here. This is like ta sadef qani neshud pur der. This is pur dur neshud. You see, the oyster shell, and of course, oyster shell in the medieval time, in medieval sources of Islamic tradition, is used as an example how the pearl, what is the origin of pearl. So oyster shell has his own story. He said, look at the oyster shell. This is, I would like to maybe read it to you from Ismail Ankaravi's commentary. And he says, like, this oyster shell, when the great storms at the end of the winter, when you in the sea, during this time, when the great storm starts in the sea, shells rise from the bottom of the sea. Then these shells appear like bubbles and begin floating on the surface of the sea. And during the rains, particularly in springtime, they keep their shells open, and they start receiving a couple of drops, by the way, of rain, this shell, which they keep it for some time in their stomach, and then over the time it becomes solidified and becomes in the end a pearl. So the contentment of the oyster here, very important, contentment, meaning kana of the oyster, is the closing of the shell, in shell, after a few drops of rain. So it absorbs the rain and it becomes a pearl in the end. So no wealth, Ankaravi saying, commentator, can ever fill the eyes of the ambitious and covetous, greedy person. Look at the Prophet said, should a human being, own 2 valleys of gold, or silver, he will still ask for more, covet to obtain the 3rd one. Hence, in the end, the Prophet, peace be upon him, says, and only earth can fill the stomach of such a greedy person, meaning on the death. So one lesson that we learn from the contentment of the oyster shell, only after it has become contented with the sufficient drops and water inside, and it's filled with the pearls. Likewise, if a student or a spiritual person is not contented, his inside, his heart is not filled with the pearls. And so which one do you prefer to fill your hearts, world or knowledge and wisdom? So how can you achieve this? You have to liberate yourself from wants and worldly poverty. And one cannot become rich, by the way, by owning abundant wealth. The real richness is the contentment of the heart. So this is the lesson that we learn from these three, of course, couplets. By the way, Mathnawi of Mevlana Rumi has layers of understanding. And I am trying to focus on the ethical side of it. I'm not going to really the mystical dimension of it, because that really is very important too, and mystical dimension and is very deep too. But once in a while, we also maybe go at the deeper levels to maybe take some lessons and some examples from there. He whose garment is rent by a love is purged of covetousness and all defect. Hail, O love, that brings us good gain. You that are the physician, you are the physician of all our ills, the remedy of our pride and vainglory, our Plato and our Galen. Human soul is covered or enclosed in selfishness. And how can you deliver yourself from selfishness and egoism? Mevlana says, by love. Of course, love of Allah Almighty. And if you would like to cure your egoism, your self-regard, your ambition, all kinds of defects, in other words, stubbornness, covetousness, and you really put in your heart love of Allah. Here, garment represents the selfishness, by the way. It's used, Mevlana, as or sensuality. And how can we break this sensuality and the selfishness? By muhabbatullah. So our body is like a garment, and we have, of course, inside our heart and the soul. So in order to receive message to your heart and soul, and you have to really take care of your body in a sense. Do not listen to all the desires of your body. Human being, maybe for the sake of time, love, one may question, how is it possible love, can cure our sicknesses and illness? Even some commentators say love even cure the physical illnesses. And I will give some examples probably if we have time. Let me speak about the message, ethical message that Mevlana wanted to convey to us here. An excessive fullness of our stomach, as we know, is the cause of all kinds of illnesses, as we learned from the Prophet. So bodily illnesses are caused by excessive drinking and eating, unless, of course, there are other, diseases. So one who is in love is already delivered and freed from the concern of much eating and drinking. And so, therefore, there's an expression, al-himyatu ra'su kulli dawa'in, which means making a diet or to diet, abstaining from excessive eating and drinking is the principal cure for the diseases. Here we look the story of Zulayha and Yusuf, as we learn from the commentators. To To recall the story of Zuleika, says, whenever Zuleika saw Yusuf, Joseph, peace upon him, she would regain her health. When she remembered the name of Yusuf, she would rejoice, even if she was sad and anxious. When she saw him or called his name, she would gain physical strength, even when she was very weak. So it is true that love in reality causes gradually the loss of, flesh and strength and feebleness, and it's true, like face painness. But these kinds of illnesses in respect to life-giving love, as commentators indicate, in fact, generate real health, favor, and comfort. So let me also quote to you here some passages from Sadreddin Konevi. He is a commentary on Asma al-Husna, the most beautiful names of Allah. And he says, lover continues to experience a pleasant, pure life by witnessing his beloved, Allah Almighty. This is the sweetest pleasure for the lovers, also greatest form of living in the sight of those filled with this desire for longing for the beloved. So bodily pains and anguishes are in no way comparable to the spiritual pleasures, he says. So the veiled person, the one whose eyes are closed to the spiritual realities, when he sees the tribulation and sufferings of the lovers, attribute them to the lovers. But in fact, the state of the lovers is the opposite of what the veiled have perceived, which means illnesses, whether physical and spiritual, can be cured. Of course, Mevlana connects the physical illnesses somehow in this immaterial and spiritual illnesses, because body and soul should be balanced and should go together hand in hand. So when you are taking care of your body, in other words, in terms of eating and drinking, not putting too much pressure on your body and food, and you are trying to keep its health. Likewise, Mevlana says, why do you wish to keep your body, in a good form? Because of your appearance, because of your health. So your spiritual aspect, however, unless it is healthy, it will not really help the improvement of your physical health. So therefore, attention should be paid first and foremost to the cure of the spiritual illnesses. They are kind of immoral, like cleaning the immoral behaviors and the vices and the evils. So this can be achieved by the love of Allah. Coming to and the third here, by the way, the remedy, dawai nakhwat, this dawai nakhwatu namusma, tu aflatun janin suma. So Mevlana quotes specifically and deliberately two great philosophers, by the way, hukama. One is Plato. He is the founder of course, the philosophy of, as they say, illumination and spiritual master, as it has been recognized by most of the philosophers in the Muslim world. And the Galen or Jalanus is the representative of the peripatetic philosophy, more physical. So one is dealing with the spiritual, and Galen is dealing with the physical. So Galen is a top, physician of his time. So he was one. So he says, if you would like to really combine the cure of Plato and cure of Galen, then you have to first work on your internal world, and your pride and vainglory should be first eliminated and should be controlled. So And love for Mevlana is the cure for all illnesses, illnesses of spiritual, immoral, and illnesses of and also physical. And one may argue, how is it possible, again, to use love to cure physical illnesses, which means morality. If you are strong in terms of spirituality and morality, it will definitely help to overcome some of your physical illnesses. That is what it means. Now, why is ego and too much emphasis Mevlana putting here on the side effect or harmful side of pride and glory, like selfishness, in seeing yourself like arrogancy, seeing yourself like better than others. This egoism is something that most of the spiritual masters, advise to cure, to take control of it. Now, through love, the earthly body soared to the skies. The mountain began to dance and became nimble. Love inspired Mount Sinai, O lover, meaning referring to Musa alayhi salam. Sinai became drunk, ecstatic, and Moses fell in a swoon, like fainted. Were I joined to the lip of one in accord with me, I too, like to read, will tell all that may be told. Maybe I continue all the, 35 couplets, and then I will try to summarize in their meanings. Whoever is parted from one who speaks his language becomes dumb, though he may have 100 songs. When the rose is gone and the garden faded, you will hear no more the nightingale's story, adventure story. The beloved is all, the lover is a veil. The beloved is living, and the lover a dead thing. When love has no care for him, he is left as a bird without wings. Alas for him then. How should I have, consciousness before or behind? How should I know what is behind, behind and what is before, when the light of my beloved is not before me or behind? So love wills that this word should be shown forth. If the mirror does not reflect, how is it possible then that? Don't you know why the mirror reflects nothing? Because it is rusty. The rust is not cleared from its face. Oh, my friend, then, listen to this tale. In truth, it is the very marrow of our inward state. So these are the couplets. And of course, right after the 35th, Mevlana Rumi will begin by telling a story to explain the meaning of love, how love really can, function to cure our diseases. That is, so therefore, our emphasis on the significance of love, of course, love of the beloved, love of the dear friend, Allah Almighty, is the major theme, of course, of Mathnawi. Now, let me share with you this maybe a little bit explanation about these couplets. Now, what is earthly body? Our wujud, badan. So if you would like to really fly to the heavens, and that is possible through love. That's, so earthly body, and we will come back to that. And mountain began to dance and became nimble. What triggered, in a sense, what moved mountain is the love of Allah. And then here is story is Musa alayhi salam. When Musa alayhi salam climbed up the mountain, of course, it was love of Allah that inspired him to, to take the courage and ask him, oh Allah, I would like to see you. And can you show me yourself? Then what really moved what propelled Musa alayhi salam to speak to Allah Almighty, and ask that he should manifest himself. He should reveal himself to Musa. And so here Mevlana alludes, in fact, in every couplet to a certain verse in the Quran. Now, let me begin by the first one. It says, so long as you are slave to your ego, to the desires, selfish desires of your body, you're not able to really absorb the love of Allah. You're not able to really digest or instill or imbibe, the love of Allah. Look, and he says here, what made Satan, Iblis, so stubborn, so arrogant? Because he saw himself superior to Adam alayhi salam. And this one through, وَإِذْ قُلْنَا لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ اسْجُدُوا لِآدَمَ فَسَجَدُوا إِلَّا إِبْلِيسَ أَبَى وَاسْتَكْبَرَ وَكَانَ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ. And when Allah Almighty asked angels to prostrate themselves before Adam alayhi salam, all they did except Satan, Iblis. And what was his argument? Iblis said, and Allah asked, مَا مَنَعَكَ أَن تَسْجُدَ لِمَا خَلَقْتُ بِيَدَيَّ. What made you not prostrate? What prevented you from prostrating, Adam, human being, whom I created with my own hands? Allah is telling to Iblis. What was the answer of Iblis? Oh Allah, you created him from the baked clay and created me from the fire. For fire is higher than the clay. So here Mevlana says, so long as you remain at the physical realm and like your appearance and as long as you are deceived and illusioned by what you have in your possessions as worldly pleasures, and as long as you take pride in them, and love will not serve you, and then you will not be able to really love. That's important. And so because Satan used his reason, by the way, his argument was very valid, and that's very important. But Musa alayhi salam also has reason, and Mevlana says, but he never acted with his egoism and selfishness. And on the contrary, it was love, Mevlana says, so much so that, Allah, you created me, but I would like to really see you. And Satan used his reason in a way by saying, "Ana khayrun like minhu," I am better than him. If you use just your dry reason, and therefore reason has to be supplemented and complemented, supported by love. Love meaning faith, of course, strong faith in Allah. And then reason will really will serve for your services, for your goodness, for your health, spiritual health. Otherwise, it will start dictating you to satisfy your bodily, desires and passions. And here, maybe there is an allusion also to ascension of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ to heaven, also ascension of Isa alayhi salam, because they were able to ascend through like kind of this journey. And according to the majority of the Muslim scholars, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ's journey was physical and spiritual, by the way, both, as unanimously agreed. So it was a miraculous journey. So you see, although he had a body and physical, but he was able to go through all the heavens and the jism haq, earthly body, can be transformed in other words into spiritual body, but through the elixir of love of Allah. And what happened, the story of Musa alayhi salam? Then I will maybe stop here because this is exactly the message that Mevlana wanted to convey to us. If you recall, as we learn from the Quran, وَلَمَّا جَاءَ مُوسَى لِمِيقَاتِنَا وَكَلَّمَهُ رَبُّهُ قَالَ رَبِّ أَرِنِي أَنْظُرْ إِلَيْكَ. And when he was at the Mount Sinai, in their appointed time, his Lord spoke to him, and then he took the courage and he said, "My Lord, show me, and so that I might look upon you." Then Allah said, "You shall not see me, لن تراني, ولكن انظر إلى الجبل." You will not be able to see me, but look up the mountains. If it remains firm in its place, then you will see me. When his Lord manifested himself to the mountain, he shattered the mountain. He made it crumble to dust. And Musa fell down in a swoon, like fainted as a result. Then when he recovered, he said, "Subhanallah, glory be to Allah, Subhanak. And tubdu, I repent and I turn to you, my Lord, in repentance. I am the first of the believers." Now, Mevlana basically alluding to this ayah, saying, here the mountain stands for the body of Musa alayhi salam, metaphorically. He says, can your body, physical body, really endure my manifestation? Endure, can really, is able to look at me if I reveal myself to you? So that was the question. And he said, look at the mountain, in the physical sense, of course, the mountain. And Mevlana is saying, unless and until you pass away from your, ambition, your greed, your selfishness, your egoism, which are the, pleasures of your body, and the love of Allah will not enter, and you will not be able to really seek the pleasure of the love of Allah, in other words. So this mountain, you have to destroy your mountain, in a sense. And in other words, if you take care of your selfishness and egoism, okay, and if you fall in love with me completely, this is of course in Sufi literature, fana fillah, and if I use the terminology, it might be difficult, and then you will be able to really behold my beauty. That's to say, Allah will empower you an internal eye, a spiritual eye, and your physical eye will be transformed into spiritual eye, and spiritual eye will be transformed into your physical eye. Thereby you will be able to really take the great taste of this love, and you will be able to also behold the beauty of Allah Almighty. And so this is again allusion, as I said, to this ayah in the Quran. Maybe a couple of, okay. Last point before, And concluding, then we may have some questions. Of course, Mevlana is trying to tell us that I know you will come to ask me the question, what is this love that you are talking about? The love that's cure for your spiritual and physical illnesses. How can we attain this love? And what do we know about this love? Muhabbah. And Mevlana gives this example. First, in order for me to reveal the spiritual dimensions and mystical dimensions or efficacious dimensions of this love to you, you should be a confidant to me. In other words, you be in accord with me. You should pair with me. So much so that, remember the nai, reed, flute, that's very important. Therefore, it says this nai, hamchunai, there is a bashpare in Turkish, which means mouthpiece, a knob, which is on the top of the nai, and the nai blower, put his lips on this mouthpiece and starts blowing his breath, and of course, then the sound comes. He says, exactly, I am looking for someone who will be in accord with me, so much so like the mouthpiece of the nai fits into the nai, okay? So that I will start telling my story to you. Now, but you are unripe, you are immature, you are not ready for it, because you are so much indulgence in worldly pleasures, and so this love will appear to you like very sensual, very physical. So you should take care of first, therefore, your spiritual dimensions, moral dimensions, and like Demsas, I am looking for a person, Demsas, which means an intimate friend, a confidant, or a hamraz, like a bosom friend, who will be in accord with me, like the nay and the nay blower and the nay. So then I will start really trying to give the subtleties of this love to him. Then he will be able to appreciate the meaning of this love. So Mevlana alludes here again to a prophetic wisdom. He says, لا تعطي الحكمة إلى غير أهلها فتظلموها ولا تمنعوها عن أهلها فتظلموها, which means do not, divulge or disclose or teach wisdom, the spiritual wisdom, to the non-competent, to undeserving person. Otherwise, you will do injustice to that person, because he will not be able to digest it. If you do so, there is an expression in the Bible, do not throw pearls before the swine. That's exactly it corresponds very well with this. Do not throw or cast pearls before the swine. How can swine, appreciate the value or worth of the pearls? Likewise, like the pearl-like wisdom that I am really talking about to you about love can be divulged, can be disclosed only the person who is receptive and has propensity. So, nor should you withhold this wisdom from the deserving person, from the one who is worthy of it. Otherwise, if you withhold it from such person, you will do injustice to hikmah, to wisdom itself. So therefore, he says, then you need to be prepared to that stage, so that I will be able to understand, I will be able to convey to you, impart to you, the meaning of love. Okay. Now, maybe I stop here. Sorry, how can I? stop sharing this. Okay. Now, do you have any questions?
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
This is Nail.
How are you, Brother Nail? Okay.
Good, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Thank you so much. A question that came to mind, it seems that in this section, Mevlana is speaking about a sensual calibration that has to take place before proceeding. Could you help us to understand what would have been the practical aspect of that within Mevlana's time? What would he have been? What would
exactly? Oh, very good question. Of course, this is a kind of relationship that we are talking about between the murid and the murshid. Of course, there is in technical terms, if I use this, there is a master, there is a disciple. So now, of course, I'm not talking about of course, there is a Mevlevi Tariqa. Okay? He must be referring to as like a spiritual path and all spiritual orders. But as far as the Mathnawi is concerned, remember what I said in the very beginning of our sohbah and the conversation last week. He said Mevlana is sitting in front of us as a spiritual master, but in the absence of him is the Mathnawi. Now, basically, Mevlana is telling, kind of giving us a warning. If you do not prepare yourself by working on your moral, character and spiritual side of you, I guess if you are not exerting your efforts to cure most of your immoral, attitudes, blemish acts, self-regard, stubbornness, conceit, okay, and ambition, and cleaning them, purging them, then replacing them with nothing but spiritual, wisdom. If you do not do so, Mevlana says, you can read my story about love. That will remain only at physical level. You will still benefit from it, by the way. You will still, get some lesson from it, as is done by many people, okay? And it will serve you to convey some, messages. But my goal, my mission is not telling really kind of dry stories. So you need to prepare yourself. You have to undertake what we call chile. Nail, when I said read this Musa alayhi salam specifically, he quoted, because if you recall, Musa alayhi salam, I guess, let me see which ayah. Yes, 142, Surah Araf 142. If you recall, over there, وَوَعَدْنَا مُوسَى 30 لَيْلَةً وَأَتْمَمْنَاهَا بِعَشْرٍ فَتَمَّ مِيقَاتُ رَبِّهِ 40. 40 days. They said, look, even Musa alayhi salam, before encountering his Lord, meeting his Lord, he had to undertake a spiritual training, which will 40 meanings, as you remember, 40 chile in this Persian, which means 40 days. Although in Mevlevi tradition, 1001 days, 1001 days going through spiritual, training, cultivation of, moral character. So he says, look, even the Prophet of Allah, Musa, what was saying in this? We appointed for Musa for 30 nights that he has to devote himself to us, prepare himself before coming to the, Mount Sinai. So But he says it was not enough. We added another 10 days, so it became 40 days and nights. Then it was completed and appointed term of his Lord, 40 nights. Then Musa alayhi salam said to his brother, if you recall the ayah, Harun, "Ukhlifni fi qawmi." I, leave you as my representative, okay, here, take my place among my people, and asli, and set the matters right in my absence, because I'm going up to Mount Sinai. And وَلَا تَتَّبِي السَّبِيلَ الْمُفْسِدِينَ. That's very important. Do not follow those who, work corruption, in a sense. So basically, Mevlana alluding to this verse by saying, look, even Musa was not able to, understand the meaning of meeting his Lord. And although he was, he's a prophet chosen by Allah. And so remember, the same applies to Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And this journey took place right, before his journey to where? Medina. Exactly. And he was in a desperate situation. He was well prepared, by the way, utmostly prepared for this journey. He lost his wife, dear, mother of the believers, Khadija, and lost his uncle, and he came back from, kind of like a da'wah mission, and he was unfortunately troubled and distressed and persecuted, in other words, like as we know very well. So, and now he was in a desperate situation. So he was well prepared, but at the same time, there was a volcano of love of Allah. And, so there was a struggle between. So this training is necessary for a disciple to, traverse the stages of human character, becoming what we call Mard Khuda, a man of God, a saintly person. Therefore, Mevlana said, if you would like to really understand what I will tell you in terms of love, you should be in my position. So we are not going to be in a position, okay? But at least now he says, you should prepare yourself. And you can. So the higher you travel through this journey, and the, more you will be perfect. And then the better you will understand and appreciate the meaning and significance of the love of Allah. That is exactly the message. And there are, of course, spiritual orders and Sufi orders, and by all means, they have their own and their practices. But here, Mevlana left for us Mathnawi. Mathnawi represents for us Mevlana himself. So he basically said, I am here to educate you, to train you, and to, to make you a good human being. And that's the message, I guess. Is that enough, Nine?
Thank you. No, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Okay. Any other question? I guess we have come to. All right. I would like to conclude again by saying this couplets from Mathnawi. This is what Mevlana, the disclosure of the secrets of the prophets and saints, has told us to follow. And this book of Mathnawi is not a book of dream or an astrology. It is inspiration, from the real world. And of course, we said what we learned from Mevlana. Allah knows the best and what is right. May Allah keep you all of us in good health. And until next week, inshallah, keep well, and special prayers for those who are ill and sick. May Allah cure them and give them shifa, also prevent all of us from all kinds of calamities and diseases. Before it is too late, as Mevlana says, we should do everything possible in terms of achieving goodness, because the essence of life is good, and we should hurry to do good. And after all our life depends on one single breath. What can you really do then in such a short moment of breath? Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum. May Allah's peace and blessing upon you all.